Welcome back to Novas and Friends. Today we're going to keep talking about the zero offset disc brake kit from Right Stuff Detailing. So we got our 1967 40,000 mile spindles, steering arms all cleaned up and painted. Did a video about that already. Got the stuff laid out here. We got our caliper bracket. We got our bolts for the caliper bracket. They also supply you with a spacer in case your spindles were already machined for disc brakes. We won't be needing that. And they also supply you with 2 bolts for your spindle. The mid 66 in back used a 1/2 inch fine thread bolt on the spindle, and then mid 66 up used the 5/8 by 18 thread bolt on your spindle. Special note is make sure you grab a tap and tap this hole out all the way, as a lot of the factory ones aren't tapped out all the way, and this could cause damage to your new bolt, or worse yet, your spindle. If you have aftermarket spindles, they're probably tapped out fine. So we're going to put together the driver's side. Since we're still rear steer on this style setup we're using, steering arm will face the rear. Make sure you don't grab the wrong steering arm and put it on this way, because it won't fit very well. Plus, when you go to put your rotor on, your steering arm will be in the way of your rotor. Also, another note, in the kit, it notes that you want to have your caliper to the rear of the vehicle. This is the driver's side, this will be the rear of the vehicle. It'll be on the same as your steering arm. If you're using a front steer church boy setup, you will have your steering arm on the other way that they supply you with. We'll be going over that kit later and showing you some of the tips and tricks on that as well. All right. So here we have 2 different size lengths of grade 8 1/2 inch fine thread bolts. The longer one goes where the thicker part of the steering arm is, the middle of the steering arm. Earlier cars had these only machined out to 7/16. If yours is that way, you should either take it to a machine shop and have it drilled out, or you can drill it out yourself. Just make sure when you drill it out, you have it bolted in place on one side, and then drill out the other one, and then bolt this in place and drill out this one. Because if you drill it out, even using a vise, you could end up having some misalignment, and that will cause you some severe alignment issues later down the road, as one steering arm could be turning faster than the other. All right, moving on. Get a bracket on here. We're just going to dry fit everything quick. Okay. You'll want to note that this should sit flush and parallel on the inside there, and this should sit flush out here as well. If it doesn't, or if you've had these machined for disc brakes before, you may have some slight tolerance issues that the spacer they provide with will not fix, and you will have to space it accordingly using some shim stock. And we'll take our longer of the 2 bolts. That will go caliper side in from the front. A little extra paint in there. And then the shorter one in from the front. And then our steering arm wheel. And these 2 nuts here they supply you with are a locking nut, also known as a stover nut, and they will go on the back side. Now this bolt here we want to make sure we use thread locking. This here they give you a thing of Loctite, and it's the blue stuff. which is fine. And we're going to snug it down. Snug it down, and then we want to torque the top bolt to a 120 foot-pounds and torque these bottom bolts to 85 foot-pounds. Your paint chips a little bit, you can always touch it up a little bit later. Run a little piece of tape over this and just get in there and dust a little paint on it. For now, we're just going to tighten these up with the impact driver. So there is your assembled driver side, 62 to 67, Right Stuff detailing, 0 offset caliper bracket onto your original spindles and steering arm. Now we need to address how to pack our bearings. It's very important that we get our bearings packed full and economically. So this is a budget build here. So before we even get started on that, we want to make sure our bearings stay in their containers until we're ready to pack them. Then we're going to inspect our spindles and make sure that there are no burrs or anything on them that need to be removed. And then we'll polish them with some Scotch-Brite. After that's done, we'll check our brand new rotors, make sure that they're clean and free of any problems that will cause damage to our new bearings. This kit is very nice as it comes with new hardware, although for our purposes, we're going to reuse the hardware that was on there since it is in very good condition. They also come with new cotter pins and new caps. Something you'll also need is a seal installation tool to put your seals in the back. Make sure they go in nice and flush. Another option to keep it under a budget, if you got a piece of heavy 1/4 inch or 5/16 inch steel, you can cut it down and make yourself a poor man's installation tool, and that'll help just push it in that way. Just tap it along and get it nice and flush so it's not crooked. All right, once you've gotten everything all cleaned up and lint free, you'll want to make sure you get yourself some good high temperature disc brake wheel bearing grease. You can get it with Moly fortified or whatever flavor you like. This one we got a pretty big container here because we got multiple cars to do. Get yourself some gloves. Get your bearings out. Make sure that they're clean and they're assembled correctly. The bearings supplied in this kit are really nice. They're actually Timken made in the USA bearings. Top quality. Want to get yourself some grease here. And just put some of it right in the middle of your hand. Don't need a ton. And then you'll take your bearing. And what you're going to do is you're going to take the grease and insert it into here in a slapping motion. You don't want to slap in the middle of your hand because that will cause carpal tunnel syndrome. But if you do on the edge of your hand, you'll be okay. Or if you're afraid of that or afraid of getting dirty, you can also go and for about $20 to $40 get a packing tool that'll do it for you. So you can take the grease and we're just going to take some of it. We're just going to take and put it in there. And we're going to watch for the grease to start coming out the very top here. It's going to take a little bit of time. So I highly recommend if you're going to do more than one car's worth of wheel bearings, invest in the tool. You can start seeing the grease come out the top now. So we're going to do that, and we're going to turn it a little bit more and work all the way around. You want to make sure you get these wheel bearings completely packed full of grease, or you'll have bearing failure. And bearing failure is not a fun thing. So we're going to pack these and we'll be right back. All right, folks, we got these bearings all packed really good. And now the dirty job still isn't over. We need to make sure we pack these low spots in here nice and full of grease. add more lubrication to the bearing. So to do that, the easiest way I've found, get yourself a paint stick and then take your grease. You can scrape it off your hand from packing bearings or just kick it out of the container. Put some on there. And then you just want to take and fill it right on the sides there. I'll make sure there's room in there for your spindle yet. You don't need to fill them so that they're crazy full, but you want to make sure you have some grease on the side here. So as these bearings get hot, this design needs to have grease inside the hub to allow circulation and cooling. We'll grab our inner bearing, which is the bigger one. Put it in place. It's kind of a messy job, but unless you're going to pay a mechanic to do it, and on our budget builds, we are DIY. Half the fun of owning a Nova Chevy 2 is working on it. The other half is cruise nights and burnouts. Not a sponsor. All right, so once you get it to that point, you can just carefully move it out of the way. Grab your other one. If it's upside down like this, you can put your fingers in there and just lift it up. Flip her over. Try not to get grease everywhere. Then we're going to fill this cavity here again. I showed you. The question you might ask is, can you put too much grease in there? Sure. There's many people that put too much grease in their ball joints and stuff too, and just fill up the boots until they explode and leak all over the place. But there's two theories behind it. One theory is I only put enough of grease in there that I need and hope it's enough. And things might wear out, but I won't have a mess immediately. The other theory is you put it in until it starts coming out and you have a mess immediately and all the time. So it's your car, your option. Grab our other inner bearing that's fully packed. We'll lay it in there. Move any excess grease. Okay, once we get this cleaned up, pretty good with our gloves. Clean up our mess over here. There's extra grease put back in here for the next car. Our tip for you, if you get grease all over your gloves, you don't get it on your hands, you get your finger underneath the glove. And then keep all the stuff on the inside. Now we got the majority of it off. I'm gonna wipe off a little more here. Now you might ask yourself, what's the difference between a grease seal and an oil seal? Grease seals typically do not have springs on the inside because they're just for grease. Oil seals will have a spring in here. You can actually take that spring out of an oil seal and you can cut a little bit of that spring out of it and then put it back together to help tighten up your seal. That's an old school mechanics trick there for oil seals. But grease seals are extremely cheap, probably less than $10 a piece. And if they start leaking, you just replace them. So once we're cleaned up, we're gonna make sure we put our seal on the correct way. This is incorrect, this is correct. Get that all lined up. Put a little pressure on it, get started. And then we'll get our tool. This tool's just a little bit bigger than this. So when it goes in, it can land right against the back side of this and keep it all parallel and flush. This is a job for someone that has patience. If it gets started a little crooked like that, see how it's a little crooked? What we can do before we get this all the way down is we'll straighten it out. We want to make sure we hold this tight against, and we're just going to tap on this side here just a little bit. Get it straightened out. Now we're a lot straighter than we were. Still crooked, but that's why we have the tool, so when it goes down, it doesn't push it past this surface. Get it straightened a little more. pretty good. So now we'll make sure this is centered up and we'll drive it home. Notice the sound change there. Now we're metal against metal. We'll have our seal all nicely put in there. Wipe off any excess grease that got in the way. Move on to the next one. Thanks for tuning in. Sorry it's been a long one. Next we're going to put these rotors on and adjust the wheel bearings for the right preload. See you then.